This is Dylan Toe from Everlook Photography. I thought I'd give a quick video on how it came to be that I took this shot at Mannum Falls. So, first thing I did was to plan it using TPE. So if you're in South Australia, the main road that you go off is Mannum Road, connecting Marrow Bridge and Mannum Road. There used to be this lower car park, but now there's access to the upper car park, which saves a lot of walking time. Now the usual spot that I photograph is around here somewhere, but because of the recent heavy rains, there was far too much water flow to access that, so I had to go further upstream. Now having a look at this map in Photographers Ephemeris on August or around early August, late July, it's probably the best time because the sunrise is coming in that direction. And so you get some indirect light on the falls. In summer, you might get some more very direct light, but this could make it a little bit too kind of contrasty. So I walked around to up here, and as you can see, directly opposite the sunrise is where the stream flows, and that's important when you're shooting rainbows. So we'll go to the Lightroom catalog. Now, as I walked into the scene, I was basically scouting everywhere. So I was walking around the dark, found a spot to cross the river, went up to the top of here. There's actually nice flow from up high, looking at all these cascades, but a few gum trees in the way. And further downstream is where the spot I usually shoot. So once there was a bit of light happening, I just did a few test compositions, really trying to get some light in the foreground there. But at this stage, I hadn't got any filters or the filter holder on. I was shooting with the Laowa 12mm to try and accentuate water movement. That was the goal. So that's actually fairly imposing and maybe 20 meters high, but it looks very, very minimized with a 12mm. So I varied taking shutter speeds and eventually got some the polarizer on, but by that time the light had faded, and as you can see, it was raining, leaving all of this stuff, all the droplets on there. So if you don't use Kim wipes to wipe away droplets, that would be what I would suggest you use, because it certainly doesn't leave any trails. As you can see, there's no smudging in any of these pictures despite wiping. So I looked further, and this is probably about 20 meters downstream from the previous shot, trying to get a composition curving into this cliff face, which was intermittently lighting up. So the light wasn't great, but I hoped that if it passed over the cloud, there might be some more direct light later on. So once again, just trying to get that flow, getting the shutter speed approximately right. There was a problematic patch here of the water that wasn't moving as fast. So I knew I'd had to take a couple of shots to get this looking half decent, along with this looking dynamic. Now shooting with the 12mm, it's hard without writing down. I lose the settings that I took the image at in terms of the aperture anyway. Now I was shooting this scene with a Nissi 3-stop medium grad, so if you're interested in the effect, this is basically a shot without it. So you see sky completely blown and a shot with it. Now you might say the rest of the scene is completely underexposed as well, but that's because I just took the whole kind of filter holder off, and I probably had it quite low down. So I can't remember whether or not I took the CPL off as well, but I think that's unlikely because that's on the ring itself. Okay, so I took a few of these shots, and then behind me, as you can see from the TPE screenshot, if you're ever looking for rainbows, you've got to know where the light source is and then look directly opposite. So I was shooting kind of this way, so intermittently I was looking over to my right shoulder, particularly when there were sprays of rain or bits of direct sun coming through. There's always a chance of a rainbow, so just keep looking behind you if you're shooting into the light in a possible rainbow situation. So as I mentioned before, there was this nice flow of water which you could see from a cliff behind me, but this gum tree was just in the way of it all. And with rainbows, my policy is to shoot first and ask questions later, because the rainbow may be gone. So I got some dodgy shots without really great composition at all, just to see if I can get a rainbow shot, and then I moved back to the original spot and it was gone. So I was like, damn, the rainbow's gone, but maybe if I stay long enough, it'll show up again. In the meantime, experimenting with shutter speeds, etc., and taking some shots with 6-stop to really draw out the exposure to get the contrast between smooth water and textured landscape. So the light changed again. There was some direct light now, but no rain. So I moved away from the potential rainbow spot and started photographing this cliff. Now the clouds are moving quite rapidly as well, so I thought that might look good in a long exposure. So I took a couple of different exposures using the 6-stop once again, with a view to then taking the same scene with shorter exposures. But you know, as luck would have it, the light then faded when I was doing the shorter exposures. And here you have no 3-stop ND, no 3-stop, and then with the 3-stop. Okay, so you can see the difference that it makes in terms of exposure. So I took a few more of these shots with this kind of curving composition towards that light, with the idea of blending an image with the light, say one of these long exposures. And the other bit of the long exposure I was planning to use was that pool of rather unattractive foam there, which you can see moving a lot slower than the rest of this torrent that was going down. And then after I'd done all of that, I did notice a rainbow. I didn't have a chance to change my filter setup, so I just went with what I did to the previous composition that I'd scouted out and quickly took some shots with the rainbow. Now, the thing you have to be careful about with shooting rainbows is that if you have a circular polarizer on, it may actually polarize the rainbow out. So I just had to make sure that the polarizer was in a position that the rainbow wasn't polarized out from the scene. So I wanted to expose for the rainbow because I knew that it would be very fleeting, and then I'd have time later on in the scene to get some desired water motion. So after the rainbow shots were done, started exposing more for the correct water motion, and then doing a 6-stop for the smooth water, which is what I ended up choosing to use as the foreground. As you see, the rainbow is well and truly gone with the bright light. So that explains how I came around to getting this kind of final shot here. And I hope that gave you some insight into how I go about planning and executing a shoot with the conditions changing all over the place.